Hey, you guys. In today's video, we are going to be covering how to debug and test your own events directly inside of BigQuery. This is super useful, and we actually use this a lot to make sure that what we're trying to do inside of Tag Manager or GA4 is working and those events are being sent to BigQuery. It also helps us debug if sessions break. So we're going to take a look at session IDs and user IDs and things like that. And we're going to be doing it using SQL, SQL, SQL inside of BigQuery using the intraday table. So a little prerequisite, you do have to have your BigQuery link set up and you do have to have the intraday table set up. But let's dive right in and take a look at how we can debug ourselves and know our exact path, just our exact journey as we're going through the different website things we have and triggering a bunch of different events. So here we have our website. Just in case you ever wanted to work with us, you want us to just do things for you and just get things done fast, then go ahead and click here and schedule in a call. Apart from that, we have just a bunch of different pages. So for example, I just navigated to a new page. I should expect to see a page view, right? Because we are now on a new page. All right, so we have a few events. Let's dive into BigQuery to see how we can extract these out. So I'm inside of BigQuery and we're going to go to our analytics property over here. So we're going to look in the intraday. So the intraday is going to be today's data. We want the real-time data streaming in. So we're going to go to events intraday. We're going to make sure that we're on today in case there's other days there. And then we're going to just start off by saying query. So here, if I just say select all, let's make this bigger. If I just say select all, then immediately we're going to have all of the different events that happened on today, and we can see all of those different events here. Here we have an event name, first visit, scroll, scroll, scroll. All of the events, different events are going to show up here. So if we want to clean this up just a little bit, let's keep the event timestamp and let's keep the event name. So we'll come up here and we'll say event timestamp and event name. We could do just some auto formatting here just so it looks a little bit nicer. We'll remove the limit since we don't have more than 1,000 events anyway today. So there we go. Now we have a event timestamp with the page view, with the event name being tracked. So this is still aggregate. This is not us specifically. So then how are we going to be able to extract and say, hey, I want to see just myself? There's kind of two techniques we're going to use to do this. One is if you don't know how to find your session ID or your user pseudo ID, we can identify us by just first looking at a certain page. So we can go to like a 404 page and then say like, hey, what was the session ID when I visited that 404 page? So let's go ahead and do that. And I actually want to bring back everything. Let's bring back everything so I can show you where the session ID and the user pseudo ID is inside of these different parameters. Well, here's the session ID, GA session ID right there. Boom, boom. Okay, so if you're inside of your browser and you go inspect and then you go to application, cookies, we're going to find our GA cookies here. Okay, we have a bunch of different GA cookies happening. So what do these values mean? Well, some of these values will represent a user pseudo ID, and some of these values will represent a session ID. Just to make it easy, let's go ahead and just delete these. So I'm just pushing the delete key. And if we reload, we should actually now have a new session happening. So we're going to be looking for the ones that are on our domain. So here we have our GA cookie, and here we have our GA underscore stream ID cookie. Okay, but what we really want to do is navigate to just a certain random page. So let's just go to random. And knowing JJ, that's probably a real page. Okay, it's not. Oopsie poopsie, here we are on a random page. That is exactly what we wanted. So now if we come in here and we say run, it might be a little bit difficult to find that exact page, right? Because there's going to be other people, we're going to have other events happening and things like that. So what we may want to do is sort by event timestamp descending. So we're going to want the most recent one at the top. It's order by. order by, sort by. Okay, so now we're going to have the most recent events up at the top. And it just so happens that my visit on that page view on this page location was the most recent event. Now, this probably may not happen for your site, right? But if you have additional traffic and things like that, you may have a hard time actually being able to find your exact page location. If that is the case, you need to do a little bit additional filtering, a little bit more on the query side of things to identify that. So for example, let's say we want to extract the page location from being inside of the event parameters to its own field. So we can do that with what's called a scalar subquery. So we're going to say select. We're doing a select statement. We're doing a query inside of a query here. So it's a subquery. Select value dot, and this value here is in the string. So we're going to say value dot string value from unnest those event params where the key equals this. So we're going to say in this row, so in all of our event parameters, find the one that says page location and then get the value from one of these columns. And the value we're going to get from the columns is going to pertain to the string value column. So we're going to say here's the key we want. So page location as page location. Okay, so now we're extracted all of the page locations. So here we have them all. We're still ordering by event timestamp, so there's been no other events, but we now have page location available to us. Let's bring back all the events. I think I mistakenly removed that. So we're going to have page location as an explicitly stated field, and then everything else. So starting with the event date, event timestamp, everything. Hey, look, someone else. Okay, so perfect. My page view event is no longer the most recent thing. So there we go. This is good. So how do we find that and search for just that page location? Well, we're actually going to wrap this entire thing in the from. So we're going to say select all from. And in the parentheses, we're going to reference this query. So we're going to say select all from, but then we're going to say where page location equals, no, like, so let's say like random. So got to make sure we do the little percent symbols there. Okay, so now we're going to see all the events so we're selecting all the events from this query where the page location contains random. And the reason to do it like this is to be able to have a reference point where we could say reference page location, because if we tried to add page location in this original query, it'll say like, hey, I don't know what page location is. It's because we created that field in the same query. So we need another query to wrap around it to know when that field is actually created so we can use it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so this is a subquery. Let's like indent this to make it look better. From here, okay, so we've got select all from this subquery where our page location is this. And the reason we're doing that page location filter is so that we can extract and know what my session ID is, right? So here we have my session ID, which is 1709. This is timestamp, right? So 1709. Let's copy this because I think this is really interesting. Where in my cookie values is my session ID, right? So if I actually search for this value, we can see that it's right here in this underscore GA underscore stream ID. I think that's the stream ID. Stream ID, and it's this first part of it. So this is where my session ID value is stored. Okay, that's different from my user pseudo ID. If we keep scrolling right here, we have a user pseudo ID inside of this is more like my long-standing one user pseudo ID will have multiple session IDs, right? This value actually corresponds to the value of the GA cookie. So it's right here, right? It matches this entire piece right here after GA 1.1 point, right? This is my user pseudo ID. So that is the difference and the utility that each one of these cookies have. This one here, where it's like got my stream ID, we'll double check if that's the stream ID, has my session ID as the value right here. The entire value of the GA cookie, minus, well, of course, minus this stuff, is my user pseudo ID. So that's how we can track those. Okay, so without having to do another like subquery here, I'm going to do it anyway, just to show you. Select value.stringValue. We're trying to extract the session ID. Okay, so session ID is here. So we're going to change my key because we want to look in that slot, in the session ID slot, GA session ID. Okay, so then the value of this is in which column? Is it in string value? No, so we're not going to say string value. Is it in int value? Yes, it is in the int value. So we're going to come over here and we're going to say select the value.int value from this key so that we pull that out, and let's call this session ID. And then we don't have to do any of that scalar subquery stuff for the user ID. It's just out and about and ready for us to use. Okay, let's just rerun this just to show that the session ID should now be extracted and it's out there. All right, so now that we know me, right, we've identified an event that this is me, this is my session ID, and this is my user pseudo ID. We can use those in our filter to continue testing just the events for me. So as an example, let's grab my user pseudo ID. So instead of where page location, let's say where user pseudo ID equals that. And if we hit run the query, now we're going to have multiple events here. So there's lots of different events, and these ones all represent the events from just me, because now we're filtered on just my user pseudo ID. Now, if you use the user pseudo ID, you're going to span multiple days. Like if you visited your own website, and if you're testing your own website yesterday, the day before, like the user pseudo ID would not have changed. So you're going to have potential multiple days here that you could filter out or whatever. If you do the session ID, so let's come back to find, so here's the page location on random. Here's my session ID. Let's do a session ID. So where session ID equals, no quotes because it's an integer. We don't need to put it in parentheses. Where session ID equals that. So now instead of identifying me as a user from the user pseudo ID, this is just going to be values in this session, which is really helpful if you're testing maybe if cross domain, right? You want to see like, hey, if I go from this spot to this spot, does my session stay intact? And you can see that by right here, by organizing your events, descending order from event timestamp, go from page to page and see what happens. So my last event right here is on random. Let's go ahead and go somewhere else. So close this. Let's go to resources. Let's come to the dashboard cheat sheet. Let's put in a name here, test at test.com. We'll hit download, and there should be an event here on the download that states generate lead cheat sheet or something like that. So that should have fired, and we have a new page view. What's up, JJ? Okay, so let's come back and run our query and check it out. So we'll go run. So now we have a bunch of new events. So last event was being on that thank you page. So there we go. Same session. That means it worked. And actually now that we have some of these things extracted, we can clean this up a little bit. So let's say, let's just grab the event name, the event timestamp, and let's grab my session ID just to make sure that's staying how we want it. And that's just going to put everything kind of like much nicer and easier to view. Okay, so here we go. I'm currently on page, the thank you page. I had a user engagement event. There's a generate lead event. There's also a generate lead Looker Studio cheat sheet event. This is a event naming strategy that we teach inside of the GA4 basics course inside of the lab. And then we have all of these other events here as well. So there you go. That is how you can test. You can find your own session ID, find your own user pseudo ID, what cookies do those correspond to, and how to do some queries to test your individual events. Let me know if that's helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.